let me tell you about a book that completely caught me off guard. And no, this is not some random self-published sci-fi story nobody's heard of. This is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, the same guy who wrote The Martian. And honestly, this book opens like a horror movie. Imagine opening your eyes and seeing absolutely nothing, just darkness. Then slowly, blurry lights. You can't move properly, your whole body feels weak. You don't know where you are. You don't know your own name. You don't even know what year it is. That's exactly how this story begins. The main character wakes up lying in what feels like a medical bed. He's connected to tubes, machines are monitoring him, and he notices something terrifying. There are two other people in the room. At first, that sounds comforting. At least he's not alone, right? Wrong. They're dead. Very dead. Their bodies are just sitting there, and he has absolutely no memory of who they are. Imagine how horrifying that would be. You wake up in an unfamiliar place, your brain is basically wiped clean, and the first people you see are corpses. That alone is enough to make most people panic. But it gets worse. He starts trying to communicate with the computer system around him, and through trial and error, he slowly realizes something insane. He's not in a hospital. He's not in a laboratory. He's on a spaceship. And not just orbiting Earth, he's ridiculously far away from Earth, like unbelievably far. At this point, I was thinking, what kind of insane book is this? And that's exactly why so many people got hooked on Project Hail Mary so fast. The author throws you directly into chaos. No warm introduction, no slow world building, no 20 pages describing trees and weather. You wake up confused at the exact same time as the main character, and you figure things out with him. That makes everything feel way more intense. He doesn't remember his job, he doesn't remember his family, he doesn't remember why he's in space. He can barely remember basic words. At one point, he sees an object and struggles to identify what it even is. That's how damaged his memory is. But here's what makes the story fun instead of depressing. The guy is actually hilarious. Even while trapped in what is objectively a nightmare situation, he keeps making sarcastic comments in his head. He's confused, he's scared, but he's also weirdly funny. That humor makes the story feel very human. Because, let's be honest, most of us, if we woke up in that situation, would probably cry for 3 straight hours. This guy starts solving problems. He checks the ship, he tries to understand the systems, he studies the dead crew members. And then he realizes another terrifying fact. He may be completely alone. Completely. No rescue team, no nearby humans, no easy way home. And he still has no idea why he's there. That mystery keeps getting bigger. Who sent him? Why him? What kind of mission could possibly be important enough to send someone this far into space, and why would they send someone who can't remember anything? The book slowly feeds you clues, and every clue makes things crazier. He discovers scientific equipment, research materials, mission logs, and you begin realizing this isn't some exploration trip. This mission is desperate. Humanity clearly sent him there for a reason, and whatever that reason is, it's huge. This part of the book feels like a combination of Alien, Interstellar, and The Martian, but it still feels original. That's hard to pull off. A lot of sci-fi books feel like recycled movie scripts. This one feels fresh because of how personal it feels. You're stuck inside one guy's brain, and his confusion becomes your confusion. Then comes one of the biggest early reveals. He learns the name of the spaceship, Hail Mary. And if you know what a Hail Mary means, you already know this mission was humanity's last desperate shot. That name tells you everything. This was not Plan A. This was not Plan B. This was the thing humanity tried when they ran out of options. And suddenly, the story gets even bigger. This isn't just about one guy surviving space. This might be about saving Earth itself. And that's when I realized this book was doing something very smart. It starts extremely small, one man, one room, no memories. Then it slowly expands into something massive. And trust me, once the book starts revealing what's happening back on Earth, things get even crazier because this mission exists for one terrifying reason. The sun is dying. And when I got to that reveal, that's when I knew I wasn't putting this book down. So at this point in Project Hail Mary, you're already hooked. A guy wakes up alone in space, no memory, dead crewmates, a mysterious mission called Hail Mary, and now the book finally starts explaining why any of this happened. And this is where the story gets way bigger than one man on a spaceship. Because back on Earth, people notice something weird. The sun is getting dimmer. Not dramatically, not movie style where suddenly the sky turns black. It's subtle. At first, scientists notice that solar output has dropped by a tiny percentage. Most regular people don't care because, let's be honest, if someone told you the sun got slightly weaker this year, most people would probably shrug and go back to scrolling TikTok. But scientists know this is terrifying because the sun isn't supposed to do that at all. Then things get worse. Researchers discover a strange microorganism floating in space. They eventually name it Astrophage, and this thing is basically a nightmare. It absorbs energy directly from stars. That includes our sun. It's literally feeding on sunlight and reproducing fast. Once scientists understand what Astrophage is doing, the real horror kicks in. They begin running climate models, and the results are brutal. Earth's temperature will begin dropping, then dropping more, then crops start failing, food shortages happen, entire ecosystems collapse, millions could die, then billions. Imagine governments trying to explain that to people. Hey everyone, quick update, the sun is being eaten by alien space microbes. Nobody would believe that. And even if they did, global panic would be insane. That's what I liked about this section. Andy Weir doesn't make it feel like some superhero movie. There's no speech about human unity, no dramatic president standing at a podium with emotional music playing. It feels messy. Governments argue, countries protect their own interests, scientists are under insane pressure, and regular people are just trying to survive, which feels very realistic because we literally watched how chaotic people became over toilet paper a few years ago. Now imagine the sun dying. Exactly. Then the book introduces one of the wildest characters, Eva Stratt. And she's basically a human bulldozer. She gets emergency authority to do whatever is necessary to save humanity. And when I say whatever, I mean whatever. She ignores politics, she ignores bureaucracy, she bulldozes through every obstacle. Need resources? Take them. Need scientists? Recruit them. Need governments to cooperate? Force them. She's one of those characters where you constantly think, she's insane, but also she might be the only person capable of fixing this. And this is where our main character starts getting pulled into everything. Before all of this happened, Rylan Grace wasn't some famous astronaut. He wasn't some military hero. He wasn't some elite genius billionaire scientist. He was literally a school teacher. That's what makes him interesting. He used to be involved in scientific research, but his life became much smaller after that. He teaches kids. That's it. And suddenly, the fate of humanity starts knocking on his door. Imagine grading homework one week, then getting asked to help solve an extinction-level event the next week. That's basically his life now. At first, he helps scientists understand astrophage, and honestly, this section is classic Andy Weir. Lots of science, lots of problem solving, but somehow it stays fun. Even if you're not a science person, the explanations feel like, okay, I kinda get it. That's hard to do. Then scientists discover something huge. A nearby star called Tau Ceti isn't being affected the same way.
That changes everything because suddenly humanity has hope. Maybe there's something near Tau Ceti that can kill Astrophage. Maybe there's a natural solution there. Maybe Earth can be saved. That's when humanity starts building the most desperate mission in history, a mission so dangerous that almost nobody expects the crew to survive. And honestly, that idea feels terrifyingly realistic, not because alien microbes are real, but because the book understands something very human. We usually don't act until disaster is already at the front door, and by then, every decision feels desperate. That's exactly where humanity is now, and Ryland Grace is about to realize he may be far more involved in this mission than he ever wanted to be.
This is where Project Hail Mary stops feeling like a fun science mystery and starts feeling uncomfortably real. Because once humanity realizes Tau Ceti might hold the answer, the question becomes, how do you actually get there? And the answer is brutal. You build a ship, you send humans, and you accept that they may never come back. That ship becomes Hail Mary, and building it is absolute chaos. The entire world basically goes into emergency mode. Governments dump insane amounts of money into the project. Scientists work non-stop. Entire industries get redirected. Rules that normally take years, ignored. Environmental concerns, ignored. Political debates, nobody has time. And this is where Eva Stratt becomes even crazier. She basically turns into the most powerful person on Earth, and honestly, a lot of what she does feels morally questionable. But the book constantly forces you to ask, what would I do if humanity had limited time left? Because she makes decisions that would absolutely get someone arrested in normal life. She seizes resources, forces cooperation, overrides governments, and people hate her for it. But without her, humanity probably dies. That moral gray area makes this section really interesting because the book doesn't pretend saving the world is clean and heroic. Sometimes it looks ugly. Then there's another huge problem. Even if they build the ship, who's actually going? Because this mission is basically suicide. You're traveling across deep space, you'll be isolated for years, and there's a good chance you die before completing anything. Not exactly a dream job. At first, they train astronauts. Makes sense, right? Except then disaster hits. And this part genuinely shocked me. The original crew members start dying, one after another. Not from some alien attack, not from sabotage, just brutal bad luck and human limitations. And suddenly, the mission starts falling apart. Time is running out. Earth is getting colder, humanity is panicking, and they need replacements fast. That's when Ryland Grace gets pulled deeper into this mess. And here's what makes his character interesting. He keeps acting like he's not the hero, because honestly, he doesn't want this responsibility. He's smart enough to help, but risking his own life? That's a different story. And the book handles this in a very human way. A lot of stories make the protagonist instantly noble, like, yes, I shall sacrifice myself for mankind. That's not Ryland. He hesitates, he's scared, he looks for ways out, and honestly, that feels way more believable. Most people talk big about bravery until it's they're the one being asked to board a spaceship and possibly die alone. Then comes one of the biggest reveals in the book, and it completely changes how you see Ryland. For most of the story, you assume he willingly became humanity's hero. That's what these stories usually do. But Andy Weir flips that expectation hard. Ryland didn't exactly make some grand heroic choice. In fact, he tried not to go. And when that reveal happens, you realize he's far more flawed and far more human than typical sci-fi heroes. And honestly, I loved that, because perfect heroes are boring. A normal guy being forced into an impossible situation, that feels way real, and it makes his future choices hit harder, because now you know he didn't start as some fearless legend. He started as a scared human being, just like most of us would.
Then comes the launch finally happens. Hail Mary leaves Earth. Humanity watches its last chance disappear into space. And imagine how terrifying that would feel. Your entire species puts all hope into one mission, and then all you can do is wait for years. No guarantees, no backup plan, no second chance. That's it. One ship, one mission, one desperate shot. And now we finally catch up to the opening of the book. Rylan waking up alone in space suddenly makes complete sense, but things are about to get even crazier, because just when this story feels like pure survival sci-fi, an alien shows up, and that changes everything. At this point, Project Hail Mary already feels huge. Dying sun, human extinction, a desperate space mission, a main character who never actually wanted to be the hero. That alone could have carried the whole book. But then Andy Weir basically says, "Oh, you thought that was the whole story?" Not even close, because Rylan notices something strange outside his ship. There's another spacecraft nearby. And immediately your brain goes, "Wait, what? That makes no sense. Humanity only sent one ship. So who built the other one?" At first he thinks maybe Earth secretly sent another mission, but very quickly that theory falls apart. The ship design looks completely different. The materials seem unfamiliar. And then reality hits him. That ship wasn't built by humans. That's right, aliens. And this is the exact moment where I thought the book might completely fall apart, because introducing aliens this late can go very wrong. A lot of stories do this, and suddenly everything becomes cheesy. Laser battles, world domination, weird cliches. But this book goes in the complete opposite direction. Ryland finally meets an alien named Rocky, and Rocky instantly becomes one of the most lovable sci-fi characters I've seen in years. And the crazy part? He doesn't even look remotely human. He's basically a giant spider-like alien made of rock-like material. He experiences the world completely differently. He doesn't see light the way humans do. He communicates through musical sounds, and his entire biology is wildly different. This could have felt ridiculous. Instead, it feels fascinating, because both Ryland and Rocky have the exact same problem. Their civilizations are both being destroyed by Astrophage. Their sons are both in danger. They both came to Tau Ceti looking for answers. That realization is such a cool moment. Across the universe, two completely different species came to the exact same place for the exact same desperate reason. That's such a great concept. And then the book becomes something I absolutely did not expect. It turns into a sci-fi buddy comedy. Seriously, at first they can't communicate. Everything is awkward. They're both confused. They're both trying not to accidentally kill each other. Imagine meeting an alien and your first challenge is basically, how do we even say hello? They slowly build communication, word by word, sound by sound, and these scenes are weirdly emotional because you're watching two intelligent species overcome something enormous, complete isolation. Ryland thought he was alone in the universe. So did Rocky, and suddenly neither of them is alone anymore. That hit way harder than I expected, and the friendship feels incredibly natural. They joke with each other, they solve problems together, they annoy each other sometimes, they save each other multiple times, and at some point, you completely stop seeing Rocky as the alien. He just feels like your favorite character. Honestly, this is probably the section that made so many readers obsessed with this book. Without him, it's still a good sci-fi survival story. With him, it becomes unforgettable. And then they make a horrifying discovery. The solution they were hoping for might not be as simple as they thought. And now, both of their species are running out of time again. everything gets more urgent, and suddenly this story stops being about one man saving Earth. Now it's about two friends trying to save two worlds. And emotionally, that raises the stakes like crazy. Because now if something goes wrong, you're not just worried about humanity, you're worried about Rocky too. And trust me, the choices coming next get brutal. This is where Project Hail Mary really starts punching you emotionally, because after Ryland and Rocky spent all that time building trust, learning each other's language, and basically becoming interstellar best friends, they actually make progress. Real progress. They discover a life form that can kill Astrophage. Finally, after all this chaos, there's an actual solution. And for a moment, you feel relief. Like, okay, humanity might survive. Rocky's planet might survive. Maybe this story is wrapping up. Maybe everyone gets a happy ending. Yeah, not so fast, because this book loves saying, here's hope, and then immediately setting that hope on fire. They prepare to head home. Ryland can finally return to Earth with the solution. And think about what that means. Earth has probably spent years wondering whether the Hail Mary mission failed. His return could save billions of lives. He's finally about to become the hero everyone assumed he was. Then disaster hits again. Rocky's ship develops a massive problem, a catastrophic problem, and suddenly Rocky may not make it home. And this is where the book hits you with Ryland's biggest character moment. Remember earlier, he wasn't exactly heroic. He tried to avoid this mission. He was scared. He wanted survival. That flaw made him feel real. But now he has a choice, and it's brutal. Option 1, go home to Earth, save humanity, become the guy who saved billions of people. Option 2, turn around, risk everything, and save Rocky. And this decision absolutely wrecked me. Because logically, Earth should come first. That's billions of lives, your own species, your own planet. That seems obvious. But emotionally, there's no way you want Rocky to die. No chance. By this point, readers love him, and Ryland loves him too. That relationship is what makes this choice so powerful. This isn't abstract morality anymore. This is personal. And Ryland realizes something important. For most of this story, he's been trying to survive. Now, he finally becomes the person he wishes he had been earlier. He turns around, he chooses Rocky, and that moment feels huge because it's not forced heroism. It feels earned. This is the same guy who once tried to avoid sacrifice. Now, he willingly risks everything. That's real character growth. And then things get even more stressful. The rescue mission is insanely dangerous. Everything starts breaking, time is running out, supplies are limited, and both of them are fighting to stay alive. Again. This book seriously does not let these characters relax. But that's why it works. The tension keeps building, and emotionally, you're completely invested now. At this point, nobody cares about the original science mystery as much as they care about, please don't let Rocky die. That's how powerful their friendship becomes. And honestly, that's why this book feels bigger than standard sci-fi. Underneath all the science stuff, it's really about connection, friendship, loyalty, and what we're willing to sacrifice for someone we care about, even if that someone isn't even human. By the end of this section, Ryland makes one final massive sacrifice, and his future becomes completely different from what he imagined. And the ending? It's way more emotional than I expected from a book about space microbes. At this point in Project Hail Mary, everything is already hanging by a thread. Ryland has made his choice. Rocky is still out there, and Earth is still dying back home because of Astrophage. So you'd expect the ending to be about some huge dramatic return, a heroic landing, a speech, a celebration, something cinematic. But Andy Weir doesn't really go for that. Instead, the ending is quieter, more personal, and honestly, more interesting. Ryland doesn't come back in the way humanity expected. He doesn't walk out of a spaceship as a victorious savior. He ends up doing something much more unexpected. He stays away. Because of what happened during the mission, because of the sacrifices, because of the choices he made for Rocky, his life doesn't return to normal. And that's kind of the point. This isn't a story where everything resets. It's a story where you go too far to ever fully go back. Meanwhile, Earth does receive the solution. The work Ryland and Rocky did together actually pays off. Humanity gets a way to fight Astrophage. The sun isn't gone. The planet isn't lost. People survive. Billions of lives are saved. So, in that sense, the mission succeeds. But what's interesting is what the book chooses to focus on. It doesn't spend a lot of time on global celebration. It doesn't linger on political victory speeches or "we did it" moments. Instead, it zooms in on something smaller, what it means for Ryland personally. Because even though he helped save Earth, his real emotional anchor is still out there, Rocky. And this is where the book hits a different kind of emotion, not the world is saved feeling, but the I lost something important along the way feeling. That's what sticks with you. Because Ryland didn't just complete a mission, he formed a connection that completely changed him, a connection that crossed species, language, biology, everything. And that kind of bond doesn't just disappear. Even when the mission ends, even when the crisis is over, even when life goes back to normal, it doesn't feel like normal anymore. And that's what makes the ending land harder than expected. Because the book quietly asks the question, if you had to choose between saving the world and meeting someone who truly understands you in the darkest place in the universe, what would actually matter more to you? And Ryland's answer is already written in everything he did. He didn't act like a perfect hero. He acted like a human being who slowly grew into something better through experience, not because he was chosen, but because he changed. That's probably why this book resonates so much with readers. It's not really about Astrophage. It's not really about space travel. It's not even really about saving Earth. It's about isolation and what happens when you finally stop being alone. Because at the beginning of the story, Ryland wakes up thinking he's the last person in the universe, and by the end, he realizes he's not. And that changes everything. So when you look at the full journey of Project Hail Mary, it's kind of wild. It starts like a survival horror story, turns into a global extinction crisis, becomes a high-stakes space mission, then transforms into one of the most unexpected friendship stories in modern sci-fi. And somehow it all works. That's why it became such a massive bestseller, not just because of the science, not just because of the plot, but because at its core, it's about connection in the most unlikely place imaginable. And once you finish it, you don't really remember the equations. You remember Ryland, and you remember Rocky. And that's the part that stays with you.